welcome to episode number 5 of The Studio with Shearer. This week on the show I'm joined by artist Wingnut who I just came across very recently. We have a local Facebook group in Dumbarton where it's very, very new actually, but has been a real cool source of like local artists, and like been getting to see the kind of the length and breadth of the talent that we have in the local area. Do you know what I mean? So thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.
How are we, mate? All right.
Good. Feeling good.
Excellent, man. What's been happening?
Been up to a lot. I mean, pandemic for me has been really good in terms of kind of selling stuff and getting commissions,
getting stuff done.
Get loads of commissions. So I've been kind of non-stop since the start of the pandemic. Slowed down a bit now because everybody's going to be skint, but
yeah.
but I'm working on a lot of things. Been working on a series of paintings over the last 2 years about the pandemic, about Corona, Loving the Time of Corona it's called. So it's just about how people and how I work my way through it, and how people.
Is that a series of paintings?
Yeah. So it's I think about 9 paintings in at the moment, and that'll continue until it gets to its natural end, basically.
Yeah. So when you do something like that, you don't have a pre-planned run kind of thing. You're doing it as you feel.
Not this one. Usually I do when I'm doing a series of paintings. I have a story, definite story, and I take that story to the end. I might go off on a tangent.
Yeah.
Several tangents, several times, but I have a definite story, and I know what's going to happen.
So that could be your story could be potentially over the course of 5 paintings. 10
5 paintings, 10 paintings. Sometimes it'll start. I think I'll do 3 paintings, but it always ends up being like 7 or 8, 9.
Yeah, that's paintings. Cool. That's very much like the songwriting. I can relate to the songwriting thing there, because it's like you're taking a topic and then you're writing a narrative on it. It's not just a one and done kind of thing, you know. No, that's cool, man.
So the ones I'm doing at the moment about the pandemic was completely the opposite way around. I just thought I'd start painting paintings about the way I'm feeling and about the way I'm feeling about the pandemic and anxiety, fear, and all that stuff, and work my way through. So it's become a story through it. But I didn't start off with a story. I just started off with, how am I going to react to this in my paintings? So the paintings at the start to the end are completely different. So
is the narrative, does it have characters? The type of story, is it that detailed?
It started off with just no characters at all. It's about just pure emotions about how you're feeling about the fear, anxiety, apprehension, all
stream of consciousness almost. Yeah,
that was all coming out, and then what developed from that was certain characters, and then a story came from that. So now I'm kind of working on that story.
And
I don't know where that's going
about that
yet.
stuff, or is it something you would rather not talk about?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Please tell us about it.
I mean, right at the start of the pandemic, everybody was kind of in fear and didn't know what was going on. But, I had the anxiety of a wife and a stepdaughter who are both on the front line. So because nobody knew what was going to happen, what it was, how it was going to affect everybody, and she was having to go to work, they're both having to go to work, then it was really scary. It was really scary for me.
Sure,
and you're kind of powerless because you're stuck, you can't do anything practically about it.
Totally.
So I thought, well, I'll try to help myself by kind of putting everything, all the feelings and emotions I was having down on canvas. And the first one I did, it was a kind of crazy looking thing. It was kind of monsters in space, and it was almost into the sci-fi scene. It was very claustrophobic and big monsters, big teeth and eyes, and
I seen the one with the kind of bigger
eye. So that's what kind of come out, and then I started. Then I did a couple more like that. Then I started to think, well, how do we? When I started to come out of that kind of fear and that apprehension, when that kind of dissipated, because it did pretty quickly. When you realise, right, okay, if things are going to be all right. My wife's not going to get virus and die, and my stepdaughter's not. They're careful, blah blah blah. And so I started to think, well, what else could I think, is coming out of this? And then I just thought about this story of people that were coming closer to each other, relationships that were getting closer or further away because of the pandemic, and that's what was happening in real life. And so that was my kind of start point.
That's great. I experienced both, so I understand that totally.
So then it kind of grew arms and legs from there. So then I kind of thought about, right, how do I think about making this into a story now that I don't feel afraid, don't feel anxious about it. Now I'll think about some characters in the story, and I come up with one character called Daedon, or which is kind of derived from the Adonis.
Right.
And he's there to save the world, and he's there to save the world, but he's an arrogant bastard at the same time. So he's loving saving the world, and he's having a great time, and he's loving being the hero. So I developed that character more and more and more, and I developed a nemesis to him. So it was another character who was basically the virus.
Right.
And this was a kind of like police state guy who's hanging out at a bar called the Boar, and we'd always see him there, and he'd always be kind of on his case and follow him about. And so and the story's
cool.
now developing from that. So this is going to this kind of fight of these two nemesis, kind of following each other about. So it's
that's super interesting, man. So like, are you in that kind of situation? Are you perceiving something that you're basing these characters on? Like, is it like
it's basically it's basing it on
the collective fear?
It's basing
of people,
it on Adonis is the fear.
Yeah.
That fear that's turned into this kind of arrogance and this kind of I'm not going to be frustrated by this. I'm not going to be stopped by this. I'm not going to be.
Which we did see quite a lot of.
I'm not going to let it control my life. Which I think where a lot of people got. We started off with that fear, and we got to a point where fuck this. It's not going to control our lives. We're going to make this be part of our lives, and we're just going to say, sod it. You're not ruling me. And that came out in a lot of ways. A lot of different ways
people,
for people.
yeah,
for people.
sure,
Some people come out with crazy stuff,
Yeah. No, totally, man. Like there's a lot of angles to discuss when it comes to us, and like it definitely manifested in very different ways with very different people.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to see, how people in society kind of split into all these wee factions, but there was just hundreds of these wee factions. It wasn't like I'm sticking by the rules or I'm not.
Yeah, there
was all a myriad of different reasons why people weren't sticking to the rules, and then different reasons why people were sticking to the rules or doing it in different ways, and it was fascinating for me to watch them. I was fine because I had my studio at home, so I'm sitting at home just painting and doing commissions, and I'm perfectly safe. But it was quite funny to quite interesting to watch what's happening to different people, and then I was watching what was happening to my own relationships with my own family, my friends, particularly my friends, and finding out who your true friends were, and who the people you could lean on, who the people that were going to be there for you, who the people were and not that I had friends that didn't become, it became estranged, but just seeing how close.
Totally, I didn't really lose any friends either, but I certainly did see other people like falling out over opinions about whether it was a conspiracy or whether they should have a mask on or whatever angle it was. But you definitely saw a lot of friction and a lot of like pent up anger as well, like coming out in these kind of arguments. So that's why I was curious if that was like a representation, do you know what I mean, of something you had seen. Totally. But please continue.
So I mean, it's still developing. That's kind of where I'm at with the story. So it's still developing from these two people, and the kind of the virus has now become this kind of monster, which has almost become part of us, almost become totally ingrained in us. So some of my latest paintings, it's kind of almost caressing and being friendly and moving us along and pointing us in different directions, which is what's happened to me. I've been pointed in several different directions because of the pandemic. I've started doing things like working in the community in a slight way, like mentoring young artists in the kind of Balloch and Alexandria area.
Right.
Getting involved with some kind of some of the kind of art groups and community groups that are in Balloch and the Vale as well, like Clightsiders and Clifftop projects, things like that.
Man,
something
amazing,
I want to do a lot more of.
I don't know much about that, but please let people know about these things.
I mean, Clifftop project was a really good one because it was basically getting in touch with young people, and they had a grant to give young people money and kind of mentor them into with older artists to try and kind of steer them in the right direction. I'm talking about kind of young people between kind of 14 and 18 years old.
That age where you start to kind of go awry, you know what I mean?
So it was like getting them to benefit from experiences of more experienced artists like myself. So that's something that I never thought I would do. People always ask me in the past, would you like to do teaching or things like that? I'm like, no, never. I'd be rubbish at it. I thought.
Totally. Yeah.
But I found, doing this mentoring, it was easy and gentle because it was like doing it at the person's own pace, and it wasn't like I'm telling you what to do. I'm like that. What do you want to do? I can point you in lots of directions.
Be the kind of tutor to people that we maybe maybe saw in the past and didn't appreciate. Do you know what I mean? A different kind of.
Not saying this is what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. It's like that. What do you want to do? What pace do you want to do it at? And I'll have
let's focus on that.
10 different directions to suggest to you without saying you should do any of them. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. And I think that's really important. Especially the last couple of years, there's been so many more people getting into the arts, I think, because I've had all this spare time. Yeah, it certainly did. It had its positives and negatives. The pandemic done it. It gave you a lot of time to work on. I think people realised people, it always annoyed people when people saw my stuff and they say, "Oh, I couldn't do that. I've got no imagination." I said, "What do you mean? Everybody's got an imagination." That's anybody can do. Anybody can paint, anybody can draw, and anybody can make something unique. Same with music. Yeah, it's exactly the same. I was just going to say. I've spoken to so many people that started making stuff or painting stuff or drawing or making music as well in the last 2 years. And for myself as well, I was kind of tinkering with the guitar. I picked it up when I was 46. Oh, did you? That was when you first started? I first started when I was 46. So what, during the pandemic? No. That was 7 years ago. So 7 years ago. So I picked it up then, and it was just for a bit of a hobby and just something to tinker with, and so I could play a few tunes. I have a few pals. Just for the sheer fun of it, kind of thing. Yeah, totally. And a few pals that are really good guitarists and that, and I was really jealous of them because at parties they could play the guitar, sing songs like that. Fuck's sake, man! It's always you're getting all the adoration, and I'm just sitting here in the corner, humming the words and all that. So that. I want a piece of that. So totally, man, that was my first thought, but I was joking. It was my first thought. So I started picking the guitar, and what I found pretty quickly was that I was playing other people's tunes, but I was shit to remember them. Yeah, I just and I wasn't really into it. So I started to try and write my own tunes, and then and it was just for me and my pals. It was just daft wee tunes. Just my pals. Yeah, totally. I've gone to a lot of music festivals in Scotland, and it was kind of stuff about that, about what happens in festivals and what happens in parties, and I did a song about kind of Glaswegian insults and stuff like that. It was just daft stuff that I would. But that's great. But that's 2 years. That's developed completely. And I started thinking about things because I think we've all had a lot of time to think as well in the last couple of years. So I've been thinking about things and my kind of past life, my past jobs and stuff like that. So what did you do before the pandemic and stuff? What was your... I came to Glasgow in 1990 and I worked with kind of homeless people in a residential setting. Right, cool. So the first place was like an emergency homeless project in the city centre, which was wild, really wild. That was people in real crisis. And then I moved on to kind of working with kind of younger homeless people, so that was like 16 to 21-year-olds in kind of residential settings with a look to moving them onto their own independence, their own flats. And then I worked with their same people, but in their flats to keep them in the flats. Right. So and you've been at all the stages. And then latterly, when I took a kind of early redundancy, and then just went to do kind of part-time session work. And I went back to doing the kind of more emergency kind of stuff again, which was again was nuts and mental. So that was like all in all about 28, 29 years of me doing that. So. And I realised that, after playing the guitar for so many years, that I thought, hold on a minute, I've got so many stories about the people and the characters I've worked with over the time. And there were some fucking amazing characters that I've worked with. Yeah, I bet, man. As you can imagine, in Glasgow, my first 2 weeks in Glasgow, I didn't understand what was that, sorry, 1990, did you say? Yeah. So, the reason why I came, I was in art school in Bath. So Bath is incredible, incredibly posh, affluent place. The art school was beautiful. So I wanted to do something that was like an extreme to that. So I applied to this volunteer organisation, and they basically sent you wherever you got sent. You didn't get a choice, and they said, right, what about a homeless project in the city centre in Glasgow? And I'm like, aye. That's aye. Okay, that was a kind of radical shift you were looking for at that time. Well, I'm sure you got it. So I wouldn't mean I was yes, but it was yes, that'd be lovely. Yeah. So I kind of rocked up in Glasgow, 22-year-old, and I was sent to this city centre emergency homeless project. And it was like a 50-bedded place as well. So, and I think the age group was 18 to 35, and it was people from all walks of life, but. Like I say, it was mainly people in crisis, so it was people with addiction issues, a lot of addiction issues, mental health issues, people who have been in and out of prison. So emergency projects are for people that have maybe been kicked out of a lot of other projects,
Yeah, yeah.
or lost the tenancies, or just come out of prison,
Yeah.
or been in kind of just come out of rehab, or just about to go into rehab. You know, it's the whole gamut of people in
different
crisis.
situations. Yeah,
So
I'm sure, man.
I was thrown from being a 21-year-old, 22-year-old in one of the most affluent places in England, beautiful city of Bath, into this situation in Glasgow.
What a change that was.
And
man.
it could have brought me, and a lot of other volunteers that did that, they lasted maybe 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
But 2 weeks into it, I was like that. I love Glasgow. I fucking love Glasgow.
Did you get that good buzz from it straight away?
I got that buzz immediately.
That's cool, man.
I love pubs, and I love, if I go to a different city, the first thing I'll do is do a wee tour of as many pubs as I can. But I don't look in books and stuff, so I'll just go out and about. I think that pub looks interesting. So I'd wander around Glasgow, not knowing where I was. So I'd be wandering the pubs in the 90s in the Gobbles and Postle and stuff like that. I have no idea where I was.
God, man.
And just take the chance. But it was just as well I didn't know. You know, people had told me.
You would have been apprehensive and probably not went as far and not explored and not got such a rich understanding of the Scottish culture. Do you know what I mean?
And I got a bit of respect from the people like that. I just thought I'd come in for a pint. And
I bet people. I bet.
And there's quite a few places like that. That was a one and only time. I maybe wouldn't go back to that one again. But some then I found some brilliant pubs. You know, back in the 90s there was a pub called the Victoria Bar, which is now the Clutha.
Right.
Down at the Clyde side. And the Victoria Bar was like the best bar in Glasgow. It was like where all the kind of musicians, writers, poets, artists, and everybody used to go.
Cool,
you know, Peter Mullen used to, the actor Peter Mullen used to be behind the bar there, and
working
behind the bar there, and all sorts of actors that have become really famous and musicians. So I used to hang about there, and I've just had a whale of a time. And that kind of got me straight into Glasgow and meeting all these characters in Glasgow, rather than just going to the pubs that, the kind of Wetherspoons type pubs or shit like that.
I
was thrown into this whole world of characters, and that's why I think I was pretty lucky, and that's why I loved Glasgow so quickly.
Yeah, man.
And just the characters. Man. I mean, it's, the first thing that happened to me, the first day that I arrived here, and I went out to the city centre and I asked directions to a pub. I think it was a Scotia. I was going to do the Scotia Bar. And this guy's like, he started to give me directions, and I hold a minute, I'll just take you. And he took me to the bar.
He just walked
up. He took me to the bar and he bought me a drink. He bought me a half and half. He sat and had a chat with me. He sat and had a chat with me, and after about half an hour, and he went. And I was like, "Fucking hell!"
That's brilliant.
Is this what's going to happen every time I go out?
No, probably not.
I know.
But I'm super happy that was the way you were introduced to us.
It could have been worse. It could have been worse, but it wasn't. But so. There you go. That's how I.
No, that's it. That was your first experience of the rich tapestry of Glasgow.
Glasgow, yeah. And I think a lot of people come to Glasgow and that it scares them, and I don't know why. Because I think it's because they have a preconception of it.
It's going to be dangerous, and then when somebody's loud and rambunctious, then immediately it all it confirms their prejudices and stuff. Do you know? But I think that's quite fairly normal as well, because it doesn't have the safest reputation, and it certainly didn't back then. Do you know what I mean? It was much worse, and for gun crimes and murders and gang criminal underworld element. You know what I mean? There was obviously a rich history there as well. So I can see why some people.
I kind of knew about that a little bit, and I would speak to people that were living in the project I was working in, the emergency place, and and they would tell me all these stories, and and I'd be gobsmacked just listening to some of the things, but. Incredibly funny at the same time. Telling these stories of harshness and terrible things that happen, but in such adventures, but in a way which is really engaging and funny, which kind of seeps into the culture of Glasgow, and and the literature and the songwriting and the poetry, and things like that.
Getting through the struggle by indulging in what we do. Do you know what I mean?
And I met so many people down at that side of town that were poets and writers, but who'd had pasts as well. Poets, writers, musicians that all had that kind of past. They come through, living in the Gobbles, Postle, whatever, in kind of deprived areas and having a difficult upbringing in and out of crime, but come out the other side and had this imagination that I was talking about.
Well, a lot of people do say that, don't they? That's what you're not necessarily you need to develop a good creative side, but like it certainly doesn't seem to hinder the process, because a lot of the famous people who are famous for all the different arts have had that rough upbringing, you know.
And if people, that's what I say, is tapping into their imagination. Like I said before, everybody's got an imagination, but people don't just tap into it because they believe they don't have it.
Yeah, that's true.
And when they start tapping into it,
kind of thing,
they kind of think, well, what if, you know, everybody's had experiences in their life, you know, and it's all relative. You know, some people's experience might be more extreme than others, but we've all had experiences. We don't just born and grow up and do nothing for that entire time. We all have stories, and we all have things to say, all things to talk about. Even people that may think they have the dullest of lives, you know, well, they don't. Everybody has something.
Yeah, totally, man.
Everybody has.
I think there's always a grass is greener kind of thing in there as well. But even if you're not exactly following the path that you want, then it makes everything else seem worse as well. But that person will have something to contribute, and something if you can just pry away the layers of kind of conditioning, do you know what I mean? But no, that's true, man. Like I get that quite a lot as well. Like people who are like, oh, it's so amazing, like singing and stuff, and I'm like, I love it, man, but like it's not. I've also taught people, and I've had that period where I never thought I would be good at teaching people. Do you know what I mean? I never really saw myself as even good enough to do it in the first place, never mind teaching people as well. But after a while, I've taught people from 7 until 70, and you see the patterns and you see the same problems. It doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? If you can get to the root of that and you can break away some of that conditioning, you can give people the creative side. You know, what I mean?
Everybody's got it in them. Our brains are this amazing thing that we only use a tiny part of, and we don't tap into it. You know, nowhere near enough. So it's everybody can be creative. You know, I always say to people who say, I can't do that. I said, well, if I drew something, it'd look rubbish. So, well, no, it wouldn't. If you drew a cup, then it would look like the cup that you've drawn, and nobody else has drawn. Therefore, it's unique. Therefore, it's a beautiful thing.
Totally.
There's no such thing as a bad drawing. There's no. I don't understand what a bad drawing is.
It's like people have this perception of what it has to be like, or it's not valid. And you know, I've never been happier since I was able to shed some of that stuff in my own creative life. You know, like that's brilliant.
People look at my stuff and they think, you know, whatever you might think is great or think it's bad, whatever. But if people do like it, then they'll say, oh, that's really precisely done. That's really well done. And so, well, no, actually, all my paintings that I've ever done are all completely out of perspective. If you look at them, they shouldn't be the way they are.
Like technically,
if you look at that table in conjunction to that wall and that chair and that thing, they're all completely out of perspective. Man, they're all totally opened up. So it's, you know, and I'm not good at that. My brain doesn't work that way. So it's, you know, and that's fine. That's fine. But that's the uniqueness of me.
Yeah, like
in that way.
Your particular style isn't dependent on technical perspective. No. Do you know what I mean? It's more about everything else that's happening in the imaging, and I think that's when people start to realise that it really does help them access that for themselves.
So I like that disorder. I like that disorder as well. My brain works in that kind of like in a way that brings disorder. I probably should tell you, I've got mild kind of Tourette's.
Right.
Which I only got diagnosed 4 years ago, but I've had it all my life.
Right.
So I've always had this. It's like a mild, so it's not like shouty, sweary Tourette's.
Totally.
I've got a lot of tics, a lot of facial tics.
Yeah.
And it comes out worse when I'm kind of anxious or
right. You know, okay, yeah, I've seen that.
So it's but over the years I've used them tics when I was a child or in school. I'd mask them by being the funny person, back in the class and joking about and jumping about. So I'd incorporate everything into doing something stupid.
So it became a part of your personality and character. You know, like
and then, but I didn't know it was, you know, Tourette's. Now that was back in the 70s and 80s. Nobody knew what Tourette's was.
Right.
So it's only just like 4 years ago, because they were getting really bad, my tics. I went to see a doctor and said, "Oh, you've got Tourette's," or that. And I was like, "Yes."
That explained it all, right, man. Wow,
that's just explained what I've been doing for the last 50 years.
Amazing, man. I like that.
And why I did that.
You've had that feeling, but you've not had an explanation for it for so long. It must have been such a light bulb moment. You know what I mean?
It's a neurological condition, isn't it? It's not mental health or anything. But I didn't realise what it also affects is like your concentration span and not being able to look at something and be practical and logical about it. Or get frustrated with things really quickly. It's like ADHD almost. It's
right. It's got some
that's really connected with Tourette's as well, and that explained all of my school years in one go like that.
Right.
Like I wasn't able to concentrate on anything. For like 2 minutes, and I'd go off on tangents, and my mind would just wander. And
I was a bit like that myself. That totally,
5 minutes. 5 minutes in a lesson, in a maths lesson at school, I was off somewhere else. I was painting pictures in my head and walking the dog and
But that's like that imagination, but like the imagination fired up as well from a very young age. You know what I mean?
It was always there. I mean, and also painting and drawing, I learnt from like 5-6 years old. These tics would.
What you were doing it from that age?
These tics would go away. These tics would go away or relax a lot
while
more.
You were painting and stuff.
And I realised that's where it's all stemmed from. It's all stemmed from being a 5-year-old who tics. To the teacher saying, well, sit down and do that. I remember exactly what it was. It was a picture of a blue jay bird. Right. And the teacher said, draw that. And so I sat and draw it. And I would really concentrate. I was there for like 2 hours. And then the teacher said, oh, that's brilliant. And he put it in a wee frame, pinned it up in the foyer in front of the school and everything. And the buzz I got from that was like that.
Right, wow, man.
I felt great when I was doing that.
So not only did it kind of distract you enough to prevent any tics or anything like that, but it also gave you the buzz of like you're getting praise for something good, and you enjoyed that feeling. Yeah, totally, man.
And as I went through school, I realised I wasn't good at anything else. Right. And so that was the only thing I was good at.
I had a similar realisation about music. Do you know what I mean?
So at 10 years old, I realised at 10 years old, really early, I'm going to have to do this as a career. Or I'm going to have to do this anyway. And maybe if it's not a career, I'm going to have to do this. It's going to have to be a massive part of my life. I want to go to art school. So that was it. So
from that age, from the age of 5, you were like,
10 years old. 10 years old before I come to that realisation. 5 years old, I realised that this was helping me. But 10 years old, I realised that's the only thing I'm good at. I thought I'd be a little bit good at English as well. So all I did was concentrate on that. So at school, that's the only things I wanted to do. Totally. So I was just the joker in the class, idiot, for the rest of all the other lessons, or even in the art lessons as well. But
did you realise at that time in the art lessons that the art was special to you?
Yeah, that was it, and that's all I wanted to do. So the art lessons. Fortunately, when I went to secondary school, I ended up having a really good art teacher. It could have gone either way. So my art teacher was brilliant. He was hard as nails, but he was really good at kind of encouraging people.
Yeah. We had cool art teachers. When we were at school as well, there was some really cool art teachers that everybody would remember now as being like the same way. Some a bit harsh and a bit like it wasn't really like a teacher-pupil relationship. And it seemed to me that I kind of like I appreciated that. I spent a lot of time there, even though they were all into music as well, so I spent a lot of time there too. But there was something different about the art teachers than the rest of the teachers in the school. I think I always remember that, Quality, man, quality. This art teacher, he was really good. So he would take some of my paintings without me knowing, or enter them into competitions. Oh, really? And then he'd win. He would tell me and give me the prize. And I'm like, there you go, you just won a prize. Wow, man, that's great. And you need to go to this thing on this night. Or okay, brilliant. So that kind of really spurred me on. So when it came to applying for art school, it was kind of plain sailing for me, because I knew I was going to get in, because I had such a body of work that I knew it was going to happen. You already had it all there anyway. It was all there, from a very young age. So yeah, and it was kind of. No, that makes a lot of sense. Then, like you were already, and it already was a kind of. Not a laid out path, not set in stone or anything, but you were seeing a path there anyway. Which is just as well, because I was, as I say, because of my concentrations, but I was rubbish at everything else. And all the teachers and all the other lessons hated me with a passion. Yeah. And this was back in, like I say, the 70s and the 80s. So, corporal punishment was still about. So you're still getting whacked with you used to get the cane down. Get the cane, aye. Oh, you got that here at that time as well. But by the time we were in school and stuff, I'm 35 just now, but by the time we were in school, it was you weren't getting the corporal punishment anymore, but it wasn't that long before. Do you know what I mean? So everybody, like my mum and all that, they would always tell us the stories about what used to happen. We used to get the cane, but the guy who gives the headmaster who gives the cane, he was really regulatory about it, so he'd only hit you not very hard. So it wasn't hurt. And you kind of pull your hand away as he did it. Yeah. So what happened is me and my friends used to get into a competition of who can get the cane the most times. So you have that thing in assembly where somebody had done something, and the teacher said, right, if nobody owns up to this,
then you're all going to get punished. So I'm like, no, I did it. And my friends were like, no, I did it. It was like Spartacus. So about 10 kids saying, no, I did it.
Brilliant, man.
And then whoever could convince the teacher would get the cane, you're like, yes.
No, that's brilliant, man. That's great. So, do you think like the Tourette's is like part of your art style? It comes from that, then?
Yeah, it's like there's so many things going on. I mean, like when I said when I start with a story, a definite story, but that goes on for tangents. That's my mind.
Yeah.
So I'll have maybe I think there's 5 paintings in the story, and then there's that scene. And once I start getting into it, within the first painting, I'll think, oh well, actually, there's another subplot that's gone off that scene.
Yeah, so
something else is
another
happening.
painting can go in
There's
there,
another character has just arrived now that's arrived on my head, so that person's going off to do that, or this thing's going to go do that. So that kind of spins off onto different paintings.
I don't know if it's an unfair comparison, but it seems like in some ways like a bit like comic books. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
That fair? I've never really thought about paintings like in a series that tell a story that way, but of course there is. Do you know what I mean? And then again, obviously, like it's like not stylistically, it's not the same, but I can.
There's a guy actually years ago, about 5-6 years ago, and he was writing a graphic novel, and it was all about the Highland clearances. It was called Sky, and he asked me to do the illustration for it because my style, I think you're right, would lend itself to that
narrative building in it. Yeah.
So I was doing it for about 6 months or so, but I couldn't get to grips with the discipline of it. It's really disciplined, and you got to produce a lot of things in a short space of time. And you got to produce a lot of similar things. And it's really, there's too much discipline for that for me.
You have to give too many instances in the story, whereas where you say if you've got 4 or 5 paintings, that's the whole story. Comic books is like thousands of tiny images. That seems stressful, man.
I couldn't cope with that discipline. That's different. That's another skill altogether, I think. And I really take my hat off to people that can do that.
They can do it totally, man.
Graphic novels, I really have a new kind of respect for that.
I suppose like animators and that's a similar. Maybe
not
not since computers have become so powerful, but I suppose like back in the day, animators would have been drawing everything in the same way, thousands of images, and like wow, man.
Spending months doing 5 seconds worth of cartoons.
It could be, or even like just on a constant thing, having to do like a half-hour episode every night. You know what I mean? So like,
could not do that. I could not do it. Like I say, my Tourette's, my mind's gone off in too many different directions. Even when I'm painting, I'll be painting for an hour, then I'll need to stop. My mind will start wandering, and I know it myself. I know when it's coming, so I think I might as well just stop now, and I'll pick up the guitar and start doing
something else.
I'll try and write something.
So you are like used to this. This kind of schedule, like your interruption and your concentration, and so you build your activities.
I build everything into
that in a lot of ways as well.
Or go downstairs and cook something and make a pie or whatever, whatever. I need like loads of creative outlets, whatever that is.
Does that happen while you're actually drawing as well? So like, again, I don't know anything about the technical side of art or anything, but like part of what struck me about your style is like there's a lot happening. It's like sometimes you look at a painting of a field or a farm and it's lovely, it's technically proficient, and it looks like what the photo of that place would look like, but it doesn't appeal to me for some reason. And part of what appealed me about yours was like there was a lot happening. There was a lot to look at, and every time I feel like I look at one, then I see something different in it that I've not noticed before, which I loved. You know what I mean? I think that's great.
But that's what happens in my paintings. That I love it. Like a lot of artists, sketching is really important for a lot of artists, and I can see why. But for me, it never really has been.
So, what is it? Can you tell like briefly, or however in depth or briefly you want? Like, what is your process? How does it start? If you've got a narrative in mind, or if you've got a story, or like, do you start sketching and then change that? And
I don't do any sketching. What happens is I think about it. I'll just think about it. I even line up bed and night, even when I'm watching the TV or even playing guitar, whatever I'm doing, I'm thinking about it, and I'll have a definite story after a wee while, and then after I've got a story, I'll start to think about them images, and then each image for each painting or each drawing that I'm going to do, I'll have it spot on in my head. As soon as I've thought about it, and as soon as I've constructed that image in my head, I don't need to put it down.
When you say constructed, sorry to interrupt, I just want to get, you mean like visualising specifically?
Visualising the composition, right, what's going to go there, what's going to be in the background, what's going to come out there, what's going to be in the left, what's going to be at the top of them. I have that composition to a T in my head.
Yeah.
And once it's there, it's like a photograph in my head.
That's
and
it.
it won't
Doesn't
go away.
change. It doesn't
It
falter.
won't go away. So it's not like if you sit in bed at night and you suddenly come up with a lyric, you have to get up and write it down.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't need to do that. I'll have that image in my
if
head.
you have the lyric or the image that
there.
sparked
It's just there.
that will not change
It's
after
not
that.
I have to say it's not the same if it's lyrics or writing a poem or something.
Yeah.
If I do that, I'll definitely
just using that as an example. Yeah,
I'll
totally.
definitely write that down. But the images are always there. So as soon as I've got an image, it's in my head. So then I can just start to put down the image straight away onto the canvas or paper.
Yeah.
And I'll just do an outline drawing.
Do you put pencil onto the canvas
just
first?
Pencil onto and there'll just be a really, really, really kind of simple outline drawing of what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And if it's canvas, if it's a bigger canvas, then I'll do a simple outline kind of paint looking like a black paint line. Yeah, yeah. And then I'll just take it from there. But what happens is, once I've got the image put down, I'll start to paint. And then when I start to paint, I'll think, oh, hold on a minute. I'm going to need to add this because that's there now. Oh, hold on a minute. If I add that, I'll need to add that. Yep. Hold on a minute. Somebody else has just popped into the scene.
So that's like this kind of like self-editing, but also creating it as you go, like that's cool, man. That's very interesting. So if a painting that, like you say, some paintings I'll start with. For instance, I did a painting about like all the Scottish stuff I like. And it was quite a small painting. And I started off, maybe I had 15 different things in there. Yeah, yeah. By the time I finished the painting, I think something like 47 different things in there. And that was just me adding things, thinking, hold on a minute, I forgot about that. I should add that. If I've got a Totty's gone, then I need to have... I see, that's great, though.
I need to have that. So it just develops and develops and develops.
And so that's like, you've started with a sketch, you've put a light sketch down, and then you've started to put in some paint, some colour. Is there still a process of addition? Are you still adding things and changing things before you get to it, even though you're working on this?
I'll omit things as well. I'll get to the point where it's in an almost finished state, but not. And then I'll maybe just take something out completely. Or maybe sometimes I'll take maybe half a painting out and not being happy with that, and then completely change because I've developed it over
so much. Wow.
I've maybe developed over like 3-4 months. If it's a big painting, then I could change like a huge part of it because I've not been happy with that. Or the story's developed to a different place. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense because like I've wrote songs and then say I started the song, finished the structure and stuff, but never quite finished that third verse. And say like an example that comes to mind, the boys in the band, and that'll be the boys and girl. My girlfriend Janine's a drummer in the band, so I better say that. We wrote a song about Tiger Woods, the golfer. So. And it was like, is he coming back? Is he coming back? And that was the kind of funky kind of hook in it. And then we've got to the point now where he actually has come back again and he's doing well again. So now that there's like the third verse that I didn't want to write because he hadn't done so well at first. It's now there. It's now there for the taking. So I can see how it can change. You start with this particular idea, and then the circumstances change, but you think about it differently as you go as well. And that's
I suppose. I mean,
that's cool.
Over the first year pandemic, I was mainly doing commissions. Yeah. Which is because I had to, because project, for money I needed to do that. But fortunately, because it was the pandemic, a lot of people were furloughed. A lot of people who had decent jobs who didn't have to work were sitting at home and couldn't go out and spend the money.
So what was your David Attenborough one? Was that?
That was a commission.
Was that a commission at that time?
That was like, I think that was beginning of last year. That was that commission. So I've done loads of commissions like that. Some I enjoyed more than others, I have to say. There's a lot of commissions.
That one's excellent. I love that.
I loved doing that because I wasn't really good at doing portraits, and because I didn't do them. Not because I didn't. I just didn't.
It just wasn't a part of your repertoire kind of thing. Yeah, totally.
And I didn't do oil painting portraits, definitely not. So and I hadn't done a lot of oil painting up to that point anyway. For a while. So
what do you mostly use? What's your?
Well, I used to. I mean, I do. It's mainly oil painting now, but it used to be lots of watercolors. But the watercolors I do don't look like watercolors. They don't.
It's not that watercolor style kind of thing.
It's very rich, very strong colours.
Pastel-y kind of thing.
No, it's not that at all. It's like mini oil paintings, really.
Excellent, man. No, that's really cool.
So I was doing loads.
I probably have looked at them. I've just not taken it as I've looked through your work. I've not taken it into account exactly what's been painted with what. But
sometimes it's difficult to tell some of the watercolors.
Yeah, certainly for me, it doesn't know.
Just looking at photographs. If you saw them in real life, you could tell. Because
you can tell with the texture.
But totally. If you see them in photographs, there's some you wouldn't be able to tell at all. So doing them commissions was great, good and bad. Because there's a lot of commissions that I had to say yes to that I thought, I don't really want to do this,
You
but
just done it for the
they're
cash
paying,
at the
you know,
time,
they're paying nice money for it, so I need to do it. A lot of portraits with people with the wains and stuff like that. But I would never do a. Somebody said, "Here's a photograph of my wains. Going to just do a photographic representation." I was like, "No,
no, you don't.
I was
like
like,
to do
tell
that.
me
Right,
about your,
cool,
tell me
that's
about yourself.
interesting.
Tell me about your family. Tell me what they like to do, favorite toys, things like that." And I'll incorporate all them things.
Why? Sorry to slightly. We'll get back to that in a wee second. But sorry to slightly divert
Right.
from that. But why are you against? Justin, I'm curious about why you're.
Because it's
just doesn't cut the. Just wasn't fulfilling kind of thing.
It's just not fulfilling.
Yeah, totally.
My mind, it doesn't. Like I say, my mind would wander, and I wouldn't interest me.
Yeah,
it doesn't interest me. I probably wouldn't make a very good job of it.
It's like if somebody asked me to do a song at a wedding or say, and they're like, it has to be done exactly in the accent and in the voice of the original, and I just don't work like that at all. The only reason I've been able to keep it going is because I take all the different songs and I kind of make them my own in a way. Do you know what I mean?
It's the same with me, and that's the same with me with doing kind of portraits. But then again, I was lucky because people that pick me to do portraits, I'd seen all my stuff on Facebook anyway, or Instagram, so they like my style, so they were picking me because of that style. So they would say to me, "This is me and my wains. This is what we like to do. This is where we like to go on holiday. This is what we." So it'd be like one of my paintings.
So you're getting
with loads of things,
a real background. Like you're creating an original image for a start. So you're not just taking a photo and then that's a nice photo somebody's taken. Can you paint that photo for me? I can see why that would maybe not be interesting.
So what I'd do is incorporate all the things. So it'd be like a favourite place the family go to, favourite foods they eat, favourite drink, favourite toys. Like I said, anything, loads of things. So I'd end up doing a painting of the family with 20, 30 different things in it.
Right,
that's all connected to them.
Man, totally.
And
that's
people loved that.
So unique and cool, man.
People loved that. I did that for a lot of weddings, like people who were going to get married. People, you know, some of the family would commission me to do a painting of the couple,
right,
as a wedding present.
But in
and how they met. I know, like it'll be incorporated with like how they met, things I like, music, the favourite song, thing like that. So
say if they met in Paris or something, like you would maybe feature the Eiffel Tower. But that's just an example of
just stuff like that. So I quite like doing that. You know, something I would do again actually. It was a nice thing to do.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
And it always went down well, I think, because you know it's a really unique thing to have. After doing lots of commissions, I wasn't doing any of my own stuff for like 18 months, and I really was getting me down. That's why I was doing that kind of loving the time of Corona, which is the paintings about Corona. I don't need to start doing them, but I was only doing it a little bit at a time, and it really, really kind of started to get me down after a while. So that I need to kind of get all this out.
Totally.
You know, I had all these
the
images.
A lot of that.
The images are building up in my head. Like I say, once I got the image, it's there, and I was kind of building up. And I thought I need to get rid of these now. So
do you think it's fair to say like there's some kind of ominous feelings in some of those ones because and that comes as a direct effect of the times of what was happening and what you were feeling and maybe witnessing, do you know what I mean?
Especially the first ones that were doing there's a lot of ominous. It's all kind of about fear.
So I think I think I'm thinking of the same one, but then if I think of that compared to like the David Attenborough one, it's just like so radically different. Do you know what I mean? That one's like
that was an exception that one because that was something. Once she told me about it and she told me what she wanted, and that's exactly what she wanted.
So she's describing it to you. Are you seeing this or are you
seeing
that result? I could have that and then down
as soon as you told me, I made a sketch.
Man, that's magical,
I don't usually do it. I made a sketch. Well, I have to do it for commissions. I have to make sketches.
Yeah.
So people can approve it. So as soon as she did that, I made a sketch the same day and sent it to her, and she said exactly what was in my head.
Brilliant,
as well.
Great.
It's brilliant. I'm so glad. And I painted that, and then I asked if I could make prints of it, and made prints of it, and then just sold loads of prints as well.
So that was a commission, but then you're still allowed to. I'm not sure exactly. I like clued up on how the legality works.
It's no legality as well. Basically, the image is mine. As soon as if I paint an image, it's mine.
Yeah.
But it's like
even if you paint it as a commission,
even if you paint it as a commission,
that's still yours.
They own it. Obviously, they just own it. They own it.
They own the physical.
But what I do
you
is
still own the intellectual
I can still
property.
But it's kind of it's right. I always ask the person.
Yeah.
If the person
just to keep
really,
on good terms
if the person said to me, "No, I don't," I wouldn't do it.
Right. Okay.
But 9 times out of 10, the people are going to be happy to do that because it also puts the value of their painting up as well.
If
I sold, if somebody sold 50,000 prints of a painting, that painting's going to be worth a lot more. You remember Jack Fetriano, the famous Glasgow artist.
The name's familiar to me. But
yeah, he wasn't famous. He was a famous artist in a way. He painted these very, very, very nice images. Nice images.
Very nice
images. That became very famous because he was very, very wary and wily, and he just made thousands of prints of them. And people, because they were nice, and they were like, they looked nice in your living room. They were good, nice with the furniture, nice with this, that, and the other. They were nice decor item. So lots of people would buy it.
Oh, so it's became kind of like
And his famous one is like it's a couple dancing on the beach.
I think about
with the umbrella, with the butler holding the umbrella.
Right,
it's a really famous painting, but it wouldn't have been famous if he hadn't sold hundreds of thousands of prints of it. But that made the actual painting worth much more than it probably should have been.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
So when I explain that to people, they'll probably say yes.
Oh, that's cool, because that increases their value. It increases the exposure of the work, and it's all very positive. There's no really a reason not to.
Some things that are really personal for some people that I've done that I would never ask them. Even if I'm really pleased with the painting, there's some ones that I wouldn't even put up on I wouldn't fit up on Facebook or Instagram because it's so personal.
So where is it? Where can you go to get your work?
Well, mainly is. I mean, I used to have a website, but I got rid of it because there was no point. Because social media, if you work it well, it's the best way to do it.
It's totally for the music industry as well. It's a completely different world that it used to be.
Facebook, you have two different types of Facebook page. You can have like a personal page, then you can have like a business page. So I have several kind of business pages, but my best one is Wingnut Art. And also on Instagram, it's Wingnut Walker Art as well. And I've used them mainly, and that's how I get most of my kind of commissions.
We want to make sure that people can go after hearing us talking about it and get in there and buy some of it. You know what I mean? That's what we want.
And I also sell lots of prints and stuff online as well. Of lots of different things I've done in the past.
I actually knew when I was I lived abroad for a while, playing as a busker, as a musician, right? And I met a guy from Germany, one of my mates, and he funded his whole travels through selling. He would rock up on the street and he would sit and do like coffee and ink, the kind of coffee and ink drawings that people do, but his own really kind of unique style, like all very small. Everything was very tiny but really busy. Loads of stuff happening, like loads of animal and nature themes and that. It's very interesting. I'll send you it so you can get a look at it.
That sounds good. No, I'd love to be. I travelled a lot when I was. When I was kind of my late teens and early 20s.
Right.
That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to just travel.
You wanted to just keep on the move. I was like that for a few years as well.
From 8 years, but I never did anything like that. But I was sitting sketch. I wasn't really confident. I was confident enough to go and travel on my own, but I wasn't confident enough to do kind of stuff like that. I didn't have a lot of self-belief at that time.
Totally, man. I know about that as well. And
also at school, I didn't think I was that good at art, so I concentrated on my social life instead. Unfortunately or unfortunately, I went to art school between 86 and 90. So it was a good time for other things.
I'm sure.
Especially in Wiltshire, there's a lot of parties and a lot of fields and a lot of marquees. That was like, it seemed to be a bit of a hub, that kind of area. I don't know why it was. I think Bristol was a big hub for their kind of party scene and the kind of illegal raves and stuff like that. And that kind of spilt out into the kind of Wiltshire and Somerset, and there was a lot of kind of new age travellers around at the time, or Christies. We used to call them Christies at the time. And these Christies kind of tapped into that vibe of this new kind of music, this new kind of acid house was that kind of first thing,
the rave style, the rave.
And they kind of tapped into it, and they would be travelling around in big buses with sound systems anyway. These folk.
Oh, really?
So what they would do is they would just.
I'd heard a lot about the old rave scene, but not so much about that and it was a subculture. There,
the subculture is one that made it. There was like I said, it was people that would go around just kind of like rocking up in their old buses and vans with the sound systems and playing like heavy dub reggae and stuff like that. And they tapped into this music scene that happened. And they basically ran with it, and there must have been so many people got rich out of that down there from like living this kind of nomadic lifestyle with no money.
Just all of a
sudden, people paying them 5-10 quid for a ticket, and thousands of people every weekend, and it was brilliant. But as an art student, as a young person,
it would be great
amazing.
Great to be in amongst that, man.
I came from a small, boring town in County Durham. I won't mention it in case people get offended, but so I went from that this kind of new town that I used to live in into this kind of like toll of the kind of culture, and it was just incredible. But the only bad side to that was I didn't get the degree I probably would have wanted to. I didn't concentrate on what I wanted to do in art school as much as I wanted to. So that became secondary.
Fuck, I mean, I don't think you're the only person that's
But it's fine.
took
No,
party
it's totally
too much
fine.
at college. Do you know what I mean? I think
It's totally
that's
fine. I mean,
unfortunate, but
what
it
happened
happens,
is
doesn't it?
that meant it. You know, that meant at the end of it, I was a bit disillusioned with the art world.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to do something different. Therefore, I ended up in Glasgow.
To be honest, man, like anybody I've known who went to art school and like finished it, left disillusioned with the art world, man, and that was in like in my kind of era when people were leaving school and going to uni and going to art school and stuff. That was a few years ago now, don't get me wrong, but even a lot of the people don't even do art they don't even do art. They don't use their degree, they don't use the knowledge and the skills that they gained while they were there. You know,
a lot of musicians come out of even my art schools. A lot of musicians come out of that.
Yeah.
There was one particular musician, Anne Shenton. She became this kind of guru of electronic music, and I didn't even know she was, because I didn't know. I don't know nothing about electronic music, but she became this guru because years later, I think it was in like 2000 or something. She was playing at the New Year's gig at the art school.
Yep.
Optimal were playing, and she was doing a set, and I didn't know she was, and I just saw her. I thought, oh, that's Anne Shenton. I remember her from art school. And I said, what are you doing here? So I'm doing a set.
Right.
And I was chatting to her, and all these folk coming over to try and get her autograph. And oh, you know Anne Shenton, you know her. And I was like, aye, who is she? I know who she is, but who is she?
That's brilliant, man.
And she did this whole set with the theremin.
Yeah.
The theremin. And then and she said halfway through the kind of set she was doing, she said to me, come up and kind of have a shot.
Well,
so I was in the middle. I was in the art school, just kind of rocking up to the theremin, going woo. That was nuts.
That's brilliant, man.
And all these folk afterwards like that. Oh,
it was such a cool interactive instrument to get to use to get the crowd involved as well. But it's so nice that was your pal. That's really cool, man.
She was just an example of there's so many people that went into music of art school, but I think that's kind of natural, isn't it? In Glasgow, there's been loads, isn't there? I mean, I think if you're into art, if you're into music, that all kind of makes sense. Like I don't really know how to do art, but I'm really into it, and so it kind of makes sense that if you weren't disillusioned with the art world, that you might become a musician. In Glasgow, you find, I mean, in smaller cities, in my hometown or in Bath even, you know, there were definitely separate. The art world, you know, people who are artists or writers were definitely separate to musicians. But I think Glasgow is complete. I think they're all kind of mixed together. You know, I used to go to the 13th Note, the original 13th Note in Glasgow when I first came up to there, and that, you know, it was all art students that become musicians. Yeah. Franz Ferdinand, folk like that.
The 13th Note on the corner with downstairs and the wee.
No, it's the original one. It's a guy that now owns like mono and stereo.
Right.
The 78, the Flying Duck, all them places. He owned the original 13th Note, which is where the Flying Duck is now. Right. And then it moved to Glasford Street. Right. And the one in Glasford Street was the one that had all the people that were coming from art school and becoming
Franz Ferdinand,
folk like that. Yeah. So you'd have loads of artists mixing with loads of musicians.
So what you found that Scotland, that's more prominent?
Glasgow,
Glasgow. Really excellent.
I can't really speak for Edinburgh or other cities, but definitely in Glasgow, I was seeing that straight away, and that's what really appealed to me as well.
I think if I think even back to like some of the things, like there's certain sound systems and that, and then they would always have video guys there doing like cool displays on screens and that kind of, and then cool posters and stuff like that.
Used to be the place you go. I think maybe on a Friday night or Saturday night used to go down there. Used to have, as well as like brilliant DJs, you'd have live painting performances or performance art.
While it was the old arts, really.
That was for a while.
It's kind of almost went full circle into it. It's now going back to stuff like that.
That was kind of like this kind of, you know, the kind of late 90s to early 2000s, that's what they're doing, and there was a definite crossover there. So you'd have like live gigs, and then they would have DJs, and then all these kind of artists kind of intermingling, doing all these different performance things.
Yeah, man, no, that's cool, man.
That's and that was the best. You know, that was the best place to go. It was a travesty when they shut it down.
Oh,
it really was.
Well, I even like I wasn't into like rave music when I was growing up, because it would taken a certain style that I wasn't really fond of, but it was also kind of really like popular and commercial. It wasn't really like the underworld of techno, which I later found in Glasgow and really loved and appreciated. You know what I mean? But I did have a period of like 2 or 3 years as well when I was like in the arches every month, at least once every month, just really enjoying the wide array of DJs that they brought to the table. And now, like I don't necessarily listen to dance music day to day. But I do enjoy making it, and I do enjoy it on at certain times, and the DJs that I listen to are still the same DJs that I saw during that period in the Arches, you know. And there's not a person that's not devastated by the outcome of it. Like, obviously the Arches had some, I think they had some deaths, and they chose to shut the place down, and it was like a legendary. A legendary place was lost, kind of thing, you know. And there's not a creative person in this country, I don't think, that doesn't speak about it in the same way, you know.
I think it's because at the time that it did happen, it's kind of the only place I was like, well, not only, but there wasn't a lot of places like that. Now it's different. There's you know, it's become you know, the SWG3 places like that. So it's
which
changed.
Is cool. It's really cool.
It's an amazing place. You know, I've been to a lot of good nights there. But at the time there wasn't much about. You know, when I first came to Glasgow, there was like 3 nightclubs. Yeah. You know, you'd have like, I think the Tunnel had just opened when I came to Glasgow, which is like the kind of like premium kind of dance music club. Yeah. And I was never into dance. Even when I was at art school, I wasn't really into dance club. I was into the energy of that kind of illegal kind of like rave scene.
Yeah, totally.
I was totally into that energy.
It's a different
because it was like, it was people from all such a weird folk from different walks of life. As I say, kind of traveling community, art students, people from, or just folk from council estates, you know, in Bristol and stuff like that. It was an amazing kind of melting pot of people.
Yeah, man, totally.
And you know, you go to some weird nights. I remember in like 1987 going to a field somewhere in Wiltshire, and it was just listening to DJs all night. And then I remember going outside the tent, and they set a stage up outside the tent, and the mist was just kind of rising. As the mist was rising, Hawkwind were playing on the stage, and I was like, what? How the fuck did they get Hawkwind to play in the middle of a field at 5 o'clock in the morning?
That's nuts, man. That's nuts.
And I thought it was like, I'm tripping. There's something else going on here, but no, it was them. So yeah, so I was in that kind of weird energy.
I'm tripping.
Maybe I was. I don't know.
Well, that's a nice wee segue back to something that I was curious about. What would you say has been the influence of psychedelics on your art and the art world?
Well, for me, I mean, as a young, I kind of picked up mushrooms when I was like 14. Somebody's big brother said, "Oh, you should try these." And go out in the field and pick them. So what's it all about? And I come from like a small town, a really small town in County Durham, where as a 12-year-old, you would smoke woodbines with banana skins in them because somebody said that got you high.
Banana bean. I remember that story, man. No, that's funny. That's funny you say that. I do remember somebody saying
puke your ring out. That's the only thing.
Scraping the skin out of bananas and all that. That's crazy, man.
Or like, what's the other thing? My pal said, "Oh, if you eat loads of nutmeg, you'll get really, you'll have hallucinations." But it's like you need to eat about 5 bags of it.
Oh God!
And nobody can eat 5 bags of nutmeg.
Oh no.
So somebody said. Somebody's big brother said, "Right, try this." So and he took us to the field, picked some mushrooms, a bag of salt and vinegar crisps, stuck them in there and ate them. And I think when I was 14, I think I'd eaten about 40 in one go. And that was.
Well, that was the first time.
Aye, that was my first time, and that was that was hard going.
That's a lot for your first time.
I remember that was I remember feeling like we're out for a night. My pals and just hanging about the streets as you do as a 14-year-old. But it felt like it was about 4 days I was out.
14's quite young still, isn't it, when you think about it as well? Like maybe I was 16, maybe the first time I took magic mushrooms, but I mean, it's like that's still a bit of a mind blower, isn't it?
But I think the good thing about that was because I took so many for a young person.
Yeah.
That the kind of visuals that I was getting from that were quite
extreme. Yeah.
Quite spectacular. You know, after that, it was in smaller doses, and it was more about the kind of having a laugh, and the kind of things were a bit trail. The kind of trails and everything was a bit wobbly. But that first experience, it was like, wow, what am I looking at? This is kaleidoscope shit.
It's funny you say that. Like I've always found that when you first take mushrooms, that the initial come up, if you're standing up and you're in a rave or something, I don't think you'll get the same thing if you're public. Do you know what I mean? But the initial, I always kind of go to sleep, and it's in that going to sleep moment. It's like kaleidoscope visuals, kind of almost as extreme as like DMT or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
We were hanging about. We were just hanging about. We would go to. Where we were, it was like, it's a small town, but you could wander out into kind of rural places. So we go to the field, we picked them, and then we could wander about. And there was a wee kind of wooded area, and some kids had made dens there, so you just go and sit in that. So it was like it was dark.
Yeah.
It was dark. I wouldn't want to be anywhere in public. You know, getting home was a fucking nightmare that night. It really was.
Even now, like it's setting. It's always very important. Do you know what I mean?
Even just sitting at home now, I think even just sitting at home in the dark with a good album on was
perfect.
It was a perfect way to do it.
Yeah, man. I
but
totally agree.
Not out in public. No way. That's doesn't work. I mean, I don't do it so much nowadays. You know, it's kind of bits and pieces now.
Yeah.
You know, and it did have an effect on the way, especially when I was at art school. You know, the stuff I did at art school was way different from what I'm doing now.
Right.
The first year of art school, it was like you do a foundation course like for a year in England. I was in Leicester, and they give us like as unlimited free paint and canvas. Yep. So you could just go to town. So I was making these 10-foot canvases and I was basically trying to draw what was happening in these trips.
Right.
So it'd be like, if you see some
on a 10-foot canvas.
On a 10-foot canvas.
Can you see them? Have you still got them?
No, they haven't survived.
That's unfortunate. Man.
That's like 35 years, you know.
Right. So please tell me more about it though. Like,
so you do. So what I do is, if I remember the very first one I did. There's an artist called Adrian Wisniewski, who was a very famous Glasgow artist.
Right.
They're the Glasgow boys of the 1980s. And he used to do these big paintings of lots of characters. There was like a story going on, but each bit of the painting was painted with lots of little kind of different colour lines. So you think about in kind of whirls and twirls and swirling about, so you can think it was like seeing kind of trails and, and like the kind of visuals you would get when you're
like trying to recreate the trip.
That's what it looked like. But I don't think he was doing that, but that's what I was getting from it. And so when
well, he wasn't doing that on purpose.
No, he wasn't doing that.
Or he certainly wasn't admitting that publicly.
No. So I saw that and I thought, what if I try and if I have a trip and then try and interpret what I've seen, because I'm quite good at keeping the images in my head.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was doing. So I was doing these big, mad, trippy paint, huge kind of like swirling. But it would be about mad things. It would be about like, the first first digs I had was living with this family, this boring kind of old couple. But I had this kind of like experience of just sitting in my room thinking about this old couple, and there's this and it was me floating about them with this kind of like swirling the air around them, and all the things that are happening, and making the living room go around in swirls, and they were going round in swirls and flying around the room, man. And that's what I was getting from this trip.
Yeah,
and
man,
I was trying to recreate this on a 10-foot canvas, but using like hundreds of thousands of different colour lines to create each image in that.
Like super detailed, but that adding a combined effect kind of
so
thing.
I was doing that for a whole year. I was doing loads of things like that, and in the foundation course you have to kind of try like printmaking, sculpture, all the kind of like elements of being an art student. So you kind of, it was like you was compulsory to do all that. So I was trying to do that. I was trying to make kind of wood sculptures, but doing the same things. So I was just cutting tiny bits of wood out and just sticking them on board and trying to do the same thing. Right. Same sort of thing.
Different materials.
So a print, so you have to do woodcut prints. Which basically is a big flat bit of wood, and you kind of chisel out an image.
Right.
So I was trying to do that as well with that, and it was getting a bit much, to be honest. It was getting a bit too much the same thing.
The same thing. If anything gets too one-dimensional,
then I needed to try something else.
You have to shake it up, don't you, man? That's it.
So that was. I think I did more kind of psychedelics then than I have done for the rest of my life. Between the kind of ages of 14, like 21, that's when I was doing a lot. And then in my life kind of shifted a little bit, because when I came to Glasgow, I was working in a job which was quite stressful.
Yeah, totally, man.
I was doing, it's something I would do occasionally, and it's something I've picked up in later life. Because I don't have that job anymore. I don't have that responsibility.
That extra responsibility.
I don't need
that's
to be
the problem, man.
6 o'clock in the morning to go and start a shift.
No, if
you don't want to be
that night before.
You don't want to come down. You don't want to be a come down when you're faced with 25 people in crisis in a city centre.
Not at all,
city centre homeless project.
Not at all, man. I can see why you would avoid it at that time, man.
So he's kind of changed, but over the last 10 years, 13 years, I've been going to a lot more kind of festivals. Yeah. So, I've got back into that, kind of go back into that a little bit. And
what festivals have you been going to?
Mainly at Eden Festival.
Oh, I'm playing at Eden this year.
I've
got a wee set on an
I'm not doing it.
stage.
It's the first year that we're not actually going to it.
Oh, really? That's a shame.
Just because I think we're going to wait till next year, just because. just coming out of the pandemic, I think a bit skint as well. You know, it's
No,
just,
everybody
there's a lot of
is,
elements.
I know.
I think if I went to any festival this year, it'd be doing the Rabbit Hole.
Yeah,
that's probably the best one.
I've seen that. That was
Probably the
looking
best
good
wee
as
one
well.
that I've been to in recent times. I was out there a few years back, and Kelburn Garden Parties.
Yeah, man.
Probably my favourite one.
I've got a few mates that make a point of doing all the rounds. They go.
Then three festivals. You got Knock and Doric as well. I used to have Electric Fields, which is away now, which is good the first 2 years, but was shite last year because you had Noel Gallagher, and that just made it a whole different vibe.
Totally, but it would bring a mainstream element to it.
It brought in a lot of 15-year-olds.
I've even heard people say that about Eden and stuff as well, but I've never.
Eden's changed, yeah. I mean, like I said, I've been there from like the first year to the last, and it's not changed that much in size. You know, and the layouts kind of grew a little bit. But you know, there is a younger kind of boutique festival crowd.
Yeah,
you know, the kind of
that'll be my mates probably.
you know what I mean. You know what I mean. The people, lassies who kind of like wear daisy chains around their head and hunt wellies
like,
and things like
kind
that.
of transmit kind of crowd. Yeah,
totally. They've been creep, but it's a small.
That's quite surprising. That even for what I've heard from people, it seems
small
like
amount. It's a small amount. A lot more young people are going, which is a good thing. I think coming to Eden, because in the start of it, it was a very certain thing at Eden. They didn't have a lot of money. They didn't make a profit from Eden. Yeah. So, and it was set up by people in Dumfries and Dumfriesshire. It was like young people had this project to make a festival, and they did it at the the Wickerman Festival.
Right.
So they had a tent at the Wickerman Festival. On the back of that, they started off Eden.
Right.
So it was a non-profit making thing. So they didn't have a lot of money, so they couldn't book.
That's how Eden came about.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Excellent,
so they couldn't book a lot of big acts in the beginning, and then after a couple of years, they would like spend lots of money on getting one big act, and then get lots of little small ones.
Yeah.
So like, I think one year it's all Gomez one year,
that's brilliant, man. Brilliant. I love Gomez, man.
And then they would have like weird acts like 1 year, or they were supposed to have what do you call them? I can't remember. Well, 1 year they had Boney M, which was shite, but there'll be things like that. Sorry.
I thought I heard the door going there. No, that's
so.
That's absolutely great, man.
So the Eden Festival grew from that, and it was brilliant because you'd have lots of local kind of bands were playing there, and bands you'd never heard of, and you just find wee gems all the time. Plus, they'd have kind of late night, really good DJs as well.
Yeah.
And as the time's got on, they've got bigger and bigger DJs. You know, Craig Charles been playing there quite a lot. He was brilliant.
He's great, man.
He's fantastic. I saw him at. He used to do. He's done a few like New Year's kind of gigs at the. Used to be at the ABC. He used to do them, and they were brilliant. He was really good.
That's actually where I remember people talking about going first. Did they not end up doing the sub club and that as well?
He's done quite a lot up here. So yes, it's places like Eden and Kelburn Festival's still kind of true to it. Is what it used to be. You know, that's been kind of the same over the years, and that's probably my favourite one. It's just because it's the most colourful and the most. It's kind of beautifully set out.
Yeah.
You've seen Kelburn Castle.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures of it, but I've never been.
And it's like a wee kind of valley goes up, and the river comes down, and it has wee stages all the way up the different
that's cool,
levels of the valley, and it's a wee kind of hippie festival still. It's so colourful, and it's still small enough. And it's still run by the people that own the actual estate in Kelburn. It's just a lovely thing to be. So it's something. I set my challenge like 5 years ago. I set a challenge that I was playing the guitar, and my challenge was to get a wee spot somewhere on a wee stage.
Right.
Eden or Kelburn.
So 5 years ago, you've set this challenge. How are you getting on
this year? So this year I'm at the point where I've a colleague of my wife's has got a recording studio, and he's let me record some of my songs.
Right, brilliant.
So now at the point of going to send them off to Eden and Kelburn to try and
to get a wee slot on it. That's great news,
I'm hopeful it's going to happen.
Well,
so
I'm at that same point as well. Like, we've had a band going for about 3 years now, and that's us just getting out doing our first few gigs, and I'm getting a few festival slots as an acoustic act and that this year. So it's a good
Eden's
point.
Great. Eden's a great one for that because it's just the right crowd. It's got a right mix of. There's a lot of families go to it, but it's not a family festival, if you know what I mean. It's kind of spread out so folk can go to different parts of the festival and get different things out of it at different times. Yeah. So there's a thing called the Snake Pit, where there's loads of tents in the middle of the middle of the ground, and so it's that's really where people can go if they want to kind of have a rave or you know, kind of late night kind of session, things like that.
Yeah.
And then they have loads of like kind of family things going on, making stuff and doing all sorts of stuff.
Sounds fantastic, man. That's great.
And the same with Kelburn as well. It's just a really nice vibe.
I know. I think that's the 3 that I want to try and focus on as well for next year. Maybe try and get to them this year if I still can, but. Try and get music away and try and get some festival slots next year too. I'm really looking forward to that.
Good.
That's the next kind of natural step into it. If like you're getting gigs, that's cool. Like you get some material recorded, and then start finding festival slots.
I mean, like I said, yeah, I'm a total beginner, and my guitar, I'm not a brilliant guitarist in the slightest. I basically can play some chords, and that's about it.
Yeah,
you know, I can't pick the guitar.
But it's like you were saying earlier, but like about the painting, like you don't. It's a bad cup. Like you know what I mean. I'm not saying I'm not brilliant at it, but it doesn't matter. Like as long as
I'm happy. I'm happy with the level I'm at. I don't. It's basically I'm doing it for me and do it for my pals, but you know, I'd like to try and do a little bit more with it. Yeah, man. And it's basically poetry to a few chords is what I'm doing.
That's it.
But I like it, and it's something I really get a lot out of, and you know, it's you know, it kind of helps with the creative process as well, and taking yourself away from my painting into something else while still being creative. You know, and I write a lot of poetry because of that.
And it makes sense if you're like diverging on another thing, you've got something else there. If you're having a moment where you're thinking about, right, I need to go into something else now, having these different things there is fantastic.
I did a whole series of paintings on a poem that I wrote a poem years ago called Jim's Odyssey.
Right.
And it was about a middle-aged man, kind of middle-aged crisis, and him basically taking his mind off onto this kind of like odyssey, this journey where he's doing all these exciting, wonderful things because he just wanted his died being nothing, being not remembered for anything. So his imagination takes him off onto this weird mental journey. Lovely. You know, it's based on kind of Homer's Odyssey, this kind of Greek myth thing. So it's basically him not wanting to die, being somebody that, you know, that won't be remembered for anything. So I based the whole I did a poem about that and based the whole series of paintings on that.
So that's super interesting.
My idea when I had an exhibition in Glasgow Art Club, it was my first kind of solo exhibition in 2020. And that was my idea, was to sing that poem at the start of it, but I bottled it, so I didn't do it.
That's all right. You'll be good to it. You'll do that. You'll be ready to do that for the next time. You know what I mean? Like, no, that's great, man. Well, mate, we've fast approached the end of our time here, man. But it's been fucking fantastic, and I would love to have you in again sometime to continue the conversation. No, man, it's been great. It's been great. We've covered a lot of stuff, man, and like. Some of it's really just what I'm curious about, like, hearing about, and some of it is like what I think loads of people are going to be interested in, is hearing how art becomes from this visualised image in your mind's eye to this thing at the end, to this thing that you sell to other people so they get enjoyment out of it, and like that. It's a fascinating process, mate. And I think we only skimmed the surface, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so like I said, I think it's part. I think it's also kind of part of my Tourette's. Is that once I start kind of going on about something, I'll go off and off and off. I can wait around for hours, particularly if I'm a bit nervous. I'll keep on going.
That makes you a fantastic podcast guest, so that's good. You know what I mean? That's brilliant. That's what we want, man.
Well, maybe next time I'll give you a couple of tunes. So.
No, we'll definitely we'll get something sorted. It is in my plans to make musical performances a bit more of a part of it, because I have so many musicians in, and I want to play some music with everybody as well.
Brilliant,
so no, that's fantastic. Everybody, thanks very much for listening. Get us on YouTube. Come and listen again next time. Thank you.
With Paul Shearer.